Okay, good morning, everybody. This is episode 411 of the John 1911 podcast. I'm not going to record this. Today is Monday, August the 10th, and this is going to be a solo episode because a little bit behind, and I'm not going to be able to scrounge up the boys this early. So I'm going to just go ahead and give you an update. As I said, a little behind, but I don't want to wait anymore. And so, in my effort to have podcasts more frequently, the goal was at least twice a week. I'm down 1 and 2 weeks. That's no good. So, but I have an excuse. So excuse alert. So here's where we're at right now. So I have obviously, if you've followed on social media, we've been having a lot of contractors on property, and it's good things. Lots of updates and fixes and upgrades to things. John 1911. Some electrical work, working on some HVAC stuff, actually even working on environmental controls for one of the armories. And actually, we even have, we've installed and, I guess an electronic gate system. So it works with, like, I guess you would call them garage door openers, but also it'll work with apps. And we are currently in the process of setting up the internet out there because, obviously the gate is not by the range barn. So we got to get internet out there so we can open and control it remotely, and cameras and all that kind of stuff. So that's kind of exciting. I can't tell you. Look, you the listener, you don't care about my problems. I don't tell anybody anything they don't care. But which is weird, on a podcast to make that statement. But one of the things that's been going on for a number of years that's been like this slow burn, just chafing my butt, is the gates. Because every time I need to move in and out of that property, just the smallest thing, doesn't matter the weather, doesn't matter, whether I'm busy, whether I'm dressed up or dressed down, I got to get out there. I got to open the gate, swing it all out, drive the vehicles through, get back out, close the gate. Sometimes I'm not always dressed for range stuff. Sometimes I'm dressed for other things, and it's kind of a problem. So it's hard to convey this over a podcast, but the level of glee and enjoyment I get just walking up to or driving up to the gate and hitting the button, hear the little beep go off, and watch the gates open. I love that. So, and even being able to open and close the gates from the range barn is a huge upgrade for me. So, it's one thing if, we've got regulars who are coming out, they know how to get through the gates, but, anybody new or anything, I'd have to either leave the gate open, which invites people to come onto the property to say hi, which I'm not a big fan of, or, having to walk all the way out there and open and close the gates. So, I'm not going to talk about the gates anymore. I'm going to say this. The gate system is called Ghost Controls. It's not this, I would call, like, super high-end system. I mean, it's basically cattle gates. And they're nice cattle gates, but they're still technically cattle gates. We actually got them from a vet, so that definitely makes them cattle gates. And it wasn't cheap, especially with all the electric and trenching that we've had to do because we ran power out there. It's not just running off of batteries, but it wasn't nearly as expensive as, say, the quotes we got from garage door people. And so, it was about half. So, and the amount of money you're talking about here, you're talking like a Mac 11 money. So, pretty happy with it. That's what's going on at the John 1911 Armory, or the range, upgrades. And we've also had more and more groups of shooters coming through. It's really started to pick up. Also, with the hiring of a property manager and taking care of, like, the daily, weekly stuff, I obviously have a lot more time to, practice and train, but even produce content, edit content, film content, get it up. And you're noticing we're definitely increasing the the frequency of the content getting published. So that is also working out really well. It hasn't quite reflected itself in the podcast schedule yet, but you will absolutely be seeing that coming. Let's see, what else is there going on? We've even had so many groups come through that we've even had a few PDs finally give us the obligatory, I mean, not really obligatory, it's my joke, unit or department patches for the wall, for the inside the range barn. And there's a couple up there that I'm glad to finally see. And, there's some that is still owe us. Because I get asked, what does it cost to shoot at the range? Well, the first thing is you got to be a cop or a department. And the second thing is all it costs is a patch. And reality is I'm not going to enforce it. But being able to focus more on actually operating the range and operating the property and getting groups through, it's, things are kind of firing on all cylinders. And I'm hoping that comes, is reflected on John 1911, the content schedule and the quality of the content as well. I will also give an update on, I'm just going to tell you, not going to give an update. The tick mitigation strategy on I guess I'll call it the shooting areas. So a couple weeks ago, we put down this tick granule stuff. We got a spreader and, this giant thing. And I figured it out. We put something like 380 pounds or 360 pounds of tick, I call it granules, but whatever it is, it's like a fertilizer. And it's just like around the range barn, parking lot, driveway, gate area, and, the pit and all the shooting positions. So, the 600 yard, the 500 yard, the picnic shelter, shooting shelter, and, the road going down to the pit, going to that area, the areas, like the grass areas on either side of the road. And we've been out there. I've been with multiple groups all day, sitting on the benches, shooting prone, walking. I haven't seen a single tick. I mean, it's phenomenal. So the stuff is obviously still working. And, but, there are limits. Like, I'm not going to put, at least yet, a bunch of tick stuff all the way down to 600. So what we've done is, around some of the target impact zones, we've put, I'll get to the 100 yard and I'll turn on the spreader and throw a bunch of stuff out, then go to the 200, turn on the spreader, throw a bunch of stuff out, rinse and repeat down to, the 500-600 and then some of the miscellaneous targets. But one of the issues that is kind of coming up is, and this is conflicting with my other project I talked about, like doing the wildflower thing. So we've been in communication with the state about possibly doing some kind of pollinator program on our property because we have all these open areas that we have to cut. And now that we have this big giant tractor, it's not like it has to be cut all the time. Like one of the issues, like people don't really think about this, but one of the issues with, you having a lawn is if you let the lawn grow up too tall, you no longer can cut it with a lawnmower. You kind of have to get into a little bit of a bush hog situation. So the issue is, it's like, well, how often should I be cutting some of these areas on, going down the rifle range? Like there are large areas of the rifle range where bullets never actually impact. They just fly over those parts of the range. And it's like, well, does that need to be cut all the time? Well, I have been cutting it all the time, but now I'm starting to realize that may not necessarily be the case. And since we have these areas where maybe I'll cut them once a year, even maybe every other year or something like that, we could let the state create a pollinator program and, have some organization as to, what's growing down there. So, but the downside to that is controlling the ticks. Ticks, apparently, I've been informed by because we've also hired an expert for, what do you call it? Like pest control around the range barn. And I've been informed that ticks apparently don't like really short grass. They like all the tall stuff, but ticks don't want to be in the short grass in the sun. So now, I'm concerned about ticks. I'm putting down all this stuff to fight ticks, while at the same time possibly instituting a pollinator program that may make the ticks worse down on the rifle range. And I haven't been able to rectify those two problems yet in my mind as to what direction we're going to go. So I put the state off for a little bit until we can kind of get that figured out. And, obviously, I think my prediction is that the tiebreaker on this battle is going to be Alpha Gal, because I am not getting Alpha Gal. I mean, it is definitely around the John 1911 range. There's people, within the region that have had it, and I don't even want to deal with it. As a matter of fact, we just got an alert that West Nile virus is now back in the area, so everyone's going to have to, be ready for that. So that's what's going on with the range. That's what's going on with updates on old news, and now we'll get into some of the new news. Doc's been coming through fairly regular. Excuse me. I should hold on one second. Let me clear my throat. It is early. Doc's been coming through fairly regularly because he is in town for the summer. He spends his winters in Arizona, and well, I'm going to say this if Doc's listening to this podcast, and this is kind of a PSA to the listener at home. If you have this really fancy gun, like a Christensen Arms gun, just as an example, it's just random I'm saying this, I promise you. And it's super accurate and super reliable, and it solves all your problems. But then you show up and you're shooting reloaded brass that's been reloaded 5 times, and you get case head separations or other issues that are causing functional things of the day. Yeah, it's time to get new brass. I'm just saying that. I'm not calling out anybody in particular. So, but I don't know why I'm saying that. So anyway, back to Doc. So Doc's been coming through quite a bit, and it's been a good time. It's been good to catch up with Doc, and he is been expressing some interest in going back to Camp Perry. And I've actually been trying to round up some of the guys to go up to Camp Perry myself, because I want to go up there and buy a few things. And over the course of this year, every time I think about driving up to Camp Perry to buy something, I end up finding it on the open market. Craig Jorgensen full-length rifle is an example, because CMP got a bunch of those. I was going to get a 1903 Springfield, and was going to run up to Camp Perry to get one. Then I ended up running across a faux sniper 1903 Springfield. So it's like, well, that kind of got canceled. My next thing is I still want a 1917, and I actually want a Grand. And up until this point, I've been pretty, I don't know how to say this, like pretty focused on just like a 7.62 Grand as opposed to a 30-06, because I live in like a 308 7.62 world. We support so many weapons that that deal with that. But now I'm starting to realize I have enough 30-06 rifles in the reference collection that maybe I don't have to have a 30-06 Grand. And I know that's sacrilegious. But I remember, like, I've always seen kids, even at Camp Perry, shooting 308 Grands. And, I feel like there's so many more ammo options on 308, particularly, match ammo, different bullet weights and different manufacturers. I just don't really have a good feel for what the current market is on 30-06. So I'm still probably leaning towards a 7.62 Grand. It would be a modern conversion, it'd be a modern example of one. It wouldn't be one of those collectible Navy ones, just because I want it to be as accurate as possible. So I'm thinking about a Grand up at Camp Perry. Doc's been talking about, all of a sudden, strangely enough, talking about getting one of those USGI 1911s. And I haven't been able to figure out if Camp Perry actually has them to buy in their store up there. So I'll have to look into that. And, the national matches have been going on. So then I don't, have to figure out the timing on some of this. So maybe they'll be available and then like they'll hold them back. I know they sell the guns, I think face to face, I think in Anniston, Alabama. I'm just not certain on what's going on with Camp Perry. In my mind, for years, Camp Perry was the home of CMP, DCM. That's how far back we go. But I feel like obviously they've really moved to Anniston and wherever they are down there in Alabama. And, I feel like Camp Perry, the matches they kind of focus on, and I think maybe they do a lot of their, at least they used to do a lot of their reclamation work up there. But, I'm just not, I don't have a good feel as to what the stores are like at Camp Perry in 2026. So if you've been to Camp Perry, because the pistol matches should be just about over, and then we're going to go into the rifle stuff. Maybe rifle's over now. And you went into the store over there. Let me know what you've seen and what your experiences were and what was available. And maybe there'll be a road trip for Doc and I and some of the boys, and we'll go up there and see what's going on and possibly buy some stuff. This is going to be the last of my personal stuff, and then we'll get into some of the cool things. So if you watch our videos, you may notice that I'll wear a hat for a while, and then the hat basically falls apart, and I have to replace it with a new hat. Baseball hats. And for the past number of years, I have been wearing Holland and Holland hats. And when they show up, they're this British racing green, dark green, forest green type color, and they have a little H&H on them. And I'd bought a Holland and Holland hat from Holland and Holland, and then I was able to get some. I wore that hat out and was able to get some delivered, and I thought it was 2 or 3 of them. And apparently, this last hat, this last hat just looks like complete hell and is falling apart. And I was like, it's time to switch to a new hat, and I think I used them all, so I'm out of hats. And that begs the question that's been brought up around here, why don't we do a John 1911 hat? Well, I'm just not quite really prepared for that yet. So, but in the meantime, instead of just getting another Holland and Holland hat, again, I'm a baseball hat guy, but I've toyed with this. I've even talked to one of our listeners about this. He lives in Texas, if you know who you are, and talking about, I'm not going to say cowboy hats, but just, other types of hats to wear because, I have to take care of the property, do a bunch of shooting, and, now there's ticks, chainsaws, all kinds of stuff. So I'm open to the idea of maybe wearing a different kind of hat. Actually, this past week or two, I've been wearing this kind of synthetic, I'm not going to call it a cowboy hat, but it's this like sun hat that's got a floppy brim that, has snaps, and you can snap it up on the sides, and then, you can wear, hearing protection over it, and it's, waterproof, and it kind of looks like I don't know, I would call them maybe like an Australian military type hat, but just a little smaller and floppier. So anyway, I don't know if a cowboy hat a technical cowboy hat would be in my future, because I just feel like it's not something that like I'd feel like a poser wearing a cowboy hat, because I'm not a cowboy. Sheriff Jones around here obviously can wear a cowboy hat. You've seen Sheriff Jones on the internet. He's like Grady Judge or Grady Judd, whatever his name is. He's our version of that. But I have somehow detected there is a what do you call it? A custom hat maker in Louisville, Kentucky, and they do. It's this younger guy. I mean, younger compared to me. I'm 54, I guess, and he looks like he's in his 30s, and he's cool, and got tattoos, and he makes these videos, and he does all kinds of hats. He does cowboy hats. He does fedoras. He does like outdoorsman type hats. And what I like about this, the potential of this, is I'm considering exploring maybe like having a real hat made, but it's kind of like the 1911 market and some of this other stuff. I feel like a lot of dudes that buy these kinds of hats or spend this kind of money on these kinds of hats, at least around here maybe, they don't really actually do stuff with them. And, if I wore one of these, I'm going to tear it up. I mean, not intentionally, but if it's raining, I'm going to be wearing it. If I got to spray bug spray on me, it's going to get bug spray on it. If it's snowing, I'm going to be wearing it. If I'm shooting, I'm going to be wearing it. So, because I'm a big believer in wearing a hat when you're shooting, especially pistol on steel, because in theory, what can happen is you hit, this is an educational moment for some of you younger guys that have not experienced this. You shoot a piece of steel, especially if the steel is angled, because a lot of the steel will have a little bit of an angle to it, so most of the spall goes down. Well, not 100% of the spall goes down, some of it goes up. And if that steel is angled so the stuff goes down, the top of that steel is angled back to you. So what ends up happening is some of that spall will shoot up above you. And if it drops behind your eye protection, that could be a bad day. So I'm just a big believer in when you're shooting steel, I like wearing a hat. So, and I look at some of these hats, whether they're like kind of cowboy hats or pseudo cowboy hats, I want to be able to obviously, push the gun out, acquire targets, but I don't want a brim that's going to, cover my targets or cover my field of view. And I also don't know how to handle hearing protection because I always wear muffs, and I don't know how to make muffs work unless I can somehow get a hat that's like relieved inside the band, and I could drop muffs in. And again, I could make the argument, and many of you will make the argument, that I should just go ahead and get some kind of custom electronic hearing protection, inserts into my ear. And there's an argument to be made for that, but I still need the option to wear earmuffs. Here's why. Sometimes some of these guns, you're around them, looking at you 50 BMG police people, you have to double muff. You got to wear earring protection and look, you're shooting it once or twice, you're shooting your qual, but I'm there all day and that stuff gets old. Or some of these Weatherby rounds, they get loud, especially if you're under the shelter. So I'm thinking about maybe taking a road trip down there to Louisville and embarrassing myself and talking to these people, if they even let people walk in, and just seeing what's possible and what you can do. Here is how little I know about this subject. I have no idea what my hat size is. I have no idea, no clue. So thought this was, if you have any feedback on this or any suggestions, a hat that I could wear to shoot, obviously shoot pistol. Like rifle's pretty easy, but pistol's like where it's, I need to be able to wear a hat, I'm doing something, and something pops up, I draw a handgun and be able to hit it. Obviously, if I'm practicing, I can even adjust the hat a little bit, but I can't. A lot of these hats, they've got this droop in the front because it's for rain, but I can't have it blocking the top 30, 20, 15% of my vision, because that could be where I need to look through the sights and see or the red dot, which even is a higher footprint, and be able to clear that brim to, ID my target. So yeah, we're going to stop talking about hats, but if you have any feedback on hats, I guess real hats, adult hats, grown-up hats, at my age, maybe grandpa hats, go ahead and leave in the comments below, and, I'm willing to hear what you have to say. Okay, new business, and we're going to kind of run through this, quite quickly. And I don't think I actually said this publicly, but there's, or maybe I did on pod. There's two companies that are making the reproduction of the SA-80, the British Army bullpup. There's Alley and Kaufman, and it's kind of a facsimile of a SA-80. It's not a one-to-one reproduction. they're using Brownell's BRN 180 uppers, and they're basically bullpupping them and custom making the furniture. And then there's another company, something in Murdoch or Murdoch and Company, whatever it's called. So anyway, Murdoch and Company, they were like $14,000, and Mongo and I were talking about it. I'm like, I'm not really prepared to do that. Frankly, because I was afraid they were going to go out of business and they would never deliver. And I've had so many issues with projects lately that I just need to put bookends on too much stuff. I'm like, no new projects until a lot of this stuff gets wrapped up. Long story short, we have one of these AKB-23s coming. Literally, it's coming. We've got an alert. It's actually moving. It is in Ohio right now. And, we'll go ahead and do a video on it. And I'm glad to see it. And that'll be the last of the big projects, hanging over my head. Is another project. We have received a replacement FRF2 sniper rifle from, I call them Old Western Scrounger, Navy Arms. I can't remember what they import under. There might be a third name, but the French sniper rifles. We had a barrel that was shot out, and there was, I'm not going to go into the gory details here, but there was. I'll just chalk it up as miscommunication between the two parties, and but it got resolved. So I haven't shot the gun yet, but the gun is here, and I've done a little video on it that I published, just helping somebody out. They're trying to figure out how to mount their Schrome scope, but the one that we have, they absolutely, it's gorgeous. The barrel looks gorgeous. Haven't shot it yet, which, again, this is how I got into this problem. I buy these guns and I'm too busy to shoot them, and they sit for years. But they've even told us that it is a significant upgrade, option wise, than the level of FRF2 that we had purchased from them years ago. So I got to give gold stars where gold stars are due. It's probably the nicest FRF2 you can get in the United States, or get in the world right now, and not have it be factory fresh. So we'll have some videos showing up of that, and stay tuned, because I know a lot of people are interested in that gun. Yes, I have seen the videos from Ben Steger. I call him Stoger. Ben Steger. I guess Ben is in Iraq, in northern Iraq, and what my former contacts would call Kurdistan, and he is over there. He does these trainings, and because he's in Iraq, he's with some kind of connected, wealthy person or entity, and they get all these custom guns. But again, they're in Iraq, so one of the guns that I guess they popped up with is made by a company called Fowler. I think I've heard of that name before, but I'm not that familiar with them at all. I don't really know who they are. And I guess maybe the gun they're having trouble with is called a Vanta, or maybe not. Maybe Vanta is another gun, but basically it's a 2011 company. And these guns, there's some kind of problem. And I guess, Steger goes over there to shoot drills, and, he borrows a bunch of guns because he's not traveling to Iraq with guns, I don't believe. As someone who's traveled internationally with guns, it can be a pain in the ass. And sometimes it's just easier to use local guns. And this guy has access to all these nice guns. And this gun apparently doesn't work for shit. And it's caused a lot of drama here in the U.S. But what's interesting to me is, and nobody really wants to say this. Yeah, I don't know who Fowler is. And I'm not disparaging Fowler. I literally don't know who they are. I don't know if Fowler is a company. I don't know if Fowler is a person. I don't know what Fowler is. It's just a name I've heard. But again, my position has always been the same. 2011s are trouble. And they are compromised designs. And the idea, just logistically, just to prove a point, okay? These custom 2011s are now in Iraq, and then getting those guns back to the U.S. to the manufacturer to service those guns. Mind you, Iraq, okay? Now, you may think the war in Iraq is over, but the war in Iraq is not over. There's fighting going on in Iraq between, there's still ISIL people running around doing stupid shit in Western Iraq. And there's absolutely a bunch of fighting going on covertly between, Shiites and pro-Iranian groups and U.S. forces and Western groups in, in Iraq. Like in Iraq. And then you got the Kurds who are being encouraged to cross over in the northern Iran to do stuff. So moving guns in and out of Iraq to send them to Fowler that's going to be tough. That is super, super, super tough. And the reality is sometimes people aren't going to want to hear this. They just not going to want to hear it. But sometimes you're shipping stuff around like that and it just gets seized and it's over. Like you're never getting it back if it gets seized by a third party for some reason. And you think I'm making this bullshit up, but you look at, you experience this in the U.S. all the time, these kinds of problems. And here's two examples. SIG got in trouble with the German, SIG and H&K got in trouble with the German government when their guns that they shipped to the United States started showing up in other places in these war zones, and the German government's like, what are you doing? H&K guns that showed up in Saudi Arabia and maybe in Yemen, and that pissed off the German government, and they shut down, exports and imports. And SIG pistols or SIG guns had ended up in the U.S., and foreign military sales somehow ended up in, I don't know if in South America or somewhere, and all of a sudden, moving these kinds of guns around, they'll get seized. And so I'm just saying that to say this. There's a bunch of people in the U.S., and they're gun nerds like me, but they just don't have an appreciation of, the life that you live in the U.S. and your access to these custom gunsmiths and gun parts and service and fitting. Look, I get it. Erbil's a nice place. There's rich people all over the world, and if you have enough money, you can pay to do anything you want anywhere in the world. But even then, it's still not easy to take care of these kinds of guns, especially like a 2011. And it's just an example of rich guy buy expensive gun and it doesn't work. The rich guy in northern Iraq, this Fowler gun, doesn't seem to be that ass hurt about this gun at all. But all the people that want to wear the jersey, the aficionados here in the United States on these stupid ass gun forums, all want to basically line up and do battle against each other. And meanwhile, the people that actually shoot guns are like, whatever. There's another argument for, Glocks are worldwide. ARs are worldwide now with all, the places we've been dropping ARs. AK-47s are worldwide. Logistics, amateurs talk tactics and professionals talk logistics. And I'm not talking about the Army. I'm talking about all kinds of stuff. You can buy, a Pagani, and, you can be Uday or Kusei, whatever his name was, Hussein, and you could buy a Pagani, and maybe because you're the billionaire dictator children of the owner of this country, the amount of money and effort it takes to service this stuff in these disparate places, man, it's not worth it for the average person. And, the reality is 2011s are compromised designs. I understand there's a lot of you that like these 2011s. Yes, I understand Wilson Combat is now technically selling 2011s because they bought somebody's line. I'm not coming off this. 2011s can be little bitchy guns, and they're not Glocks. And, nobody that actually shoots this stuff, that actually deals with this stuff, is surprised by any of this. So don't know Fowler, really don't know Steger, don't know this gun if it's a Vanta or some other gun, but yeah, surprise, surprise, some, finicky gun is now in some hard to reach place, and it's going to be a bitch to get it addressed. So, but they'll figure it out. But yeah, like, no one cares. It's just how it really works in the world. Amateurs talk tactics, professionals talk logistics. And the rest of that axiom comes from me. If you don't talk logistics, you're telling me that you don't actually use your shit, because everything breaks and everything needs to be serviced. So I'm gonna get off of it. So yeah, that's where we're at with that. Updating videos on, what's going on in the reference collection and like what the hell's in the back of the Armory. And I put a video out yesterday. I filmed it a little bit ago, but this Rock River Arms gun, that it's an AR-15 that we got from an estate. I explained it on video that basically I get in the write-up on the video that I get basically, if I deal with an estate, I don't manipulate an estate. I don't try to hustle them. I basically will educate them, and if we don't make a deal on anything, they at least get a better education and can know where they want to go. And typically this plays out well for me, because one thing they know by dealing with me is it's going to be easy. Like if I'm dealing with an estate, they can just basically make a deal with me, and I'm going to solve all their problems, and it's all going to happen in an hour, and we're out of there. So Rock River Arms gun, carbine. I guess it might be factory. It's got this heavy bull barrel on it, and the gun's retarded. And I forgot to say this. So when I show up in a state, I will break up guns into 3 categories: guns I want, guns I could possibly want, guns I absolutely don't want or don't care. And and I will let the estate know that I physically will break them up so they can see, and I'll give them opinions. People will want this. I kind of want this. I don't want these at all. And, if they want to get rid of everything and not want to have to onesies, twosies, threesies, people coming through or dealing with, a gun store, maybe we make a deal. In this particular estate, they basically were like, please take it all. And I'm like, well, I'll give you this for this, and then these for these, and then this for this. And that number does not go up exponentially. And I ended up with this Rock River Arms that is just retarded. We're probably going to break it up. I've been looking at this gun for a number of years. Have never touched it. I'm going to get rid of the upper. There's a weird red dot on the top of it that I'm going to, like Dr. Optic maybe, and I'm going to see if I can't get it to work and put that on a DOE pistol, and I'll just sell the complete upper, the bolt and all that. Even though it probably came with the lower, it's probably a Rock River Arms set, but I'll keep the lower and maybe use the lower as some kind of, project lower for, like, I don't know, maybe I'll get a Geisley upper or something, or whatever else comes along. I'm realizing it's not a bad idea to have some decent uppers, and I'm pretty certain the Rock River Arms has decent lowers. I'm pretty certain Rock River Arms has decent lowers, and so I could pretty much put anything on there and not have to worry about it. I don't normally, now new subject, I don't normally telegraph things publicly that are on my to buy list, because it just, there's no point driving up the price or desirability, and I'm competing against people. Well, MarColMar Arms is apparently suspending operations because I guess the people that are running this business are getting older, and they're no longer going to be filling orders for complete guns, but I guess they're staying in the parts business, or maybe the making jigs, and I'm not exactly certain how it all works, but we're in the market for one of these Spanish set-me type guns, and I feel like maybe they're going to go up in price. But I guess also a bunch of parts kits have come in, which maybe that'll take it to the drive the prices down. But actually, haven't talked about this in years. We had bought one of those set-me parts kits, one of those Spanish parts kits, years and years and years ago, and I'm still sitting on it because this is before Marco Arms ever popped up. And so I was kind of like, ooh, if I could just buy a Marco Arms gun, and instead of having to build this, maybe I'll just get rid of the parts kit. Well, now all of a sudden I'm afraid I'm gonna look around. These Marco Arms guns are going to be expensive, so we'll see how it goes, and I'll go from there. Let's see what else. Yes, I saw the shooting at the In-N-Out Burger, the dude with the 5.7. Good on him. No, the fact that he was wearing like this cowboy type hat is not a motivation for me talking about not wearing a baseball hat on the range. So I will make a point, and I'm not being a dick. I'm not being a dick, but he didn't. As far as I know, he didn't shoot the perpetrator. Hey, look, suppressive fire, driving him away, and doing whatever. But at the end of the day, just remember something: hits count, and misses. Maybe you get lucky, maybe you don't, but hits go a long way. So, I can understand the idea of, how to move in and out of positions, tactical stuff, all this, all that. But, at the end of the day, standing and delivering is still something you need to do. And I'm not advocating bullseye shooting, but if you're carry guns, you need to think about, at least every once in a while, just take some time to just get a little target and a piece of paper, and you don't even have to draw from a holster. I mean, I personally would, but just focus on shooting little groups at various distances, two-handed, one-handed, whatever it takes, because ultimately it's hits on target that solves problems and makes you the real hero. So I thought it was interesting that there was no hits. Turns out this dude, he offed himself. A couple more things that I think are worth noting that I think people should pay attention to. The first one is copper has reached its all-time high, at least a few days ago, and we haven't seen that reflected in the price of ammo yet, but it obviously is coming. That is a leading indicator. It's not all going to be about the wars. I don't know how much, like 5.56 or 9mm ammo. Like 9mm, I don't think it's all going to Ukraine or wherever. Obviously, it's not. There's probably a bunch of ammo going to the Kurds right now, but and some ammo probably going to Saudi Arabia. But expect to see a creep up in prices on ammunition, and I don't think it's going to be related to the silly season of the politics. I think just the market is going to start getting tighter again, and the reason I'm paying attention to this is I've been shooting so much as far as practice ammo is concerned. 9mm, I'm down to my last 1,500 rounds. I was surprised. I only have a case and a half left, and I was like, oh shit, like we gotta get that, I gotta go get that taken care of. Also, what's happened is a company, patents have expired, and a company has decided to remake the Surefire MR07 system so you can mount weapon lights to pistols, particularly 1911s. I think they made it for other systems. This is really good news. We have an original MR07, but one of the problems we ran into with it was, today we're in 9mm, and there is a difference between a 9mm slide stop and a 45 slide stop on a 1911. And I would be super duper interested to see if this company starts working on a slide stop solution that also may be optimized for use on 9mm 1911s, because it'd be cool to be able to do like this retro look with an MR07 and some of these 9mm guns that we've got. So I'm definitely going to be keeping an eye on that, and if it's something you're interested in, I think you should too. Well, unfortunately, this podcast is going to have to end abruptly. Looking at the recording after I was done recording, turns out the recording wasn't there at the end. It was getting garbled and all messed up. So we're going to have to call it here. So I'm going to go ahead and toss it and maybe save you guys some of the pain of having to listen to me drone on a solo episode. So we'll get the next one out. It'll be better when I get all the boys together. Hopefully I can get all three of them together. So, well, this wraps up episode 411 of the John 1911 podcast. If you want to see more stories or pictures, links of anything we discuss, please go to the website at john1911.com. That's JOHN1911.com, where it's all about shooting guns and having fun. Everybody, have a good day.